it's always been a story I've been very familiar with since college. I went to Pendleton College in Salford, and I remember it was getting advertised around the Lowry around about 2011 to 2013, but I never had the opportunity to go see it. And like then the film came out, and then just yeah, it just became like a snowball effect of like my favorite actor was Kit Harington when he did Game of Thrones, and then yeah, and then I looked at his journey, and he'd been in it as well as the original Albert, and like yeah, it just felt like the right time to like say yes to this one, especially when it came around. Like,
I mean, it's the National Theatre. It doesn't
yeah,
really get any bigger than that. It is incredible. And you
yeah,
said you went to Pendleton College. So many actors that have gone on to do amazing things have gone to Pendleton College. It's like this performing arts school. I feel like we should rename it Fame or something.
yeah. Well, it basically is like if you want to do a college degree that's not centered down south and you're from like the northwest area, Pendleton it did market itself at the time as like if you're into musical theatre, you're into performing arts, just come here. And it's all BTEC as well. I think a lot of us were like, what? So we don't have to do any tests. But it was a fantastic experience, like genuinely. And they taught me at the time because I didn't know that drama schools existed as an entity, like as a uni degree. I thought at first I thought it was something like, and I'm sure it's not the case because I didn't go there. But like if you went to RADA, you'd have to spend out your own pocket to study there. But they taught me about if you go, you can get grants and you can get it through UCAS. And this is like over 12, 13 years ago. So it literally opened the door to the life I've got today.
I know, and what a life. I mean, gosh, you were in Romeo and Juliet, the Royal Exchange earlier on.
Aye.
You've been in Netflix shows. You're just kind of going bang, 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 bang. But for you, as you said before, this role and this, show itself is really special. And I think it's special because the story has so many elements. I mean, I've been to see it, I've laughed, I've cried, and I've just got so emotional and caught up in it.
Yeah, it is such a whirlwind of the story. That's the first thing I noticed when I read the script. Usually, when you get an audition, you read the script and like you just read it sometimes. Sometimes it's like, all right, I can see it from that character's point of view. I can see from maybe what they're trying to do, or like maybe it doesn't touch you at all. But this one, I mean, the writing in itself is so brilliant. I remember finishing it just going like, oh my god, I feel quite emotional. Like, how are they going to even do this on such an epic scale? But I think when it comes to both world wars, especially World War One, as Britain's first taste in modern warfare, it evokes such an evocative feeling of emotion anyway. And then you've got the story of Albert trying to find his horse. Like he goes to a war zone to go find his horse. Where when we spoke to Michael Mapergo himself, he said over 11 million horses died. So the chances of him finding his horse coming back alive were just like so slim. And I think that's what we love, don't we, in stories, is like when the protagonist succeeds and it's actually a good ending to something that was so horrific, which was the First World War. Like,
I know, and the story of Joey, the horse, you get so attached to him as you're going through it. I mean, what is it like with the puppets? Because I don't even like calling them puppets because
yeah.
you feel that they're real. It's just an incredible sense of you forget that people are handling them. Now, in rehearsals, how is that going? Working with that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we're all actors, and obviously they are also getting taught how to puppeteer. So like, it helps them tell the story even more because they're so, they're thinking maybe, and as well, puppeteers are actors as well, but like the people that are working the horses are actors that trained, and it brings it to life so much. I can't describe it. It's like there's a horse in the room. I remember when a few of them got into Top Thorn and Joey in the first week so we could meet them to see what it was like. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, like the way that they breathe, like the heart, like, and they're constantly doing it, constantly working how a horse would behave. And we've done some research, had little cast field day trips out to the barracks in Hyde Park to see what horses were like. Yeah. I'm not in the scenes with the horses per se, and apart from like a few bits, but what I've seen, it's just sensational. Like, my partner's father was telling me, and this was before I even got the role. Like, he was telling me a few months back, yeah, we saw it in 2013. It was incredible. Like, you forget that there are puppeteers like helping the horse, and I was like, really, that can't be true. Like, how true is that? Then when you're watching it, like, you completely forget they're there. Like, and then that's with the techniques they've been taught by Matt and Lewis. It's literally incredible.
You really do. You really believe that they are real. It is incredible, and the sounds and everything, and wow. But yourself, you mentioned obviously you don't interact too much with the horses and stuff, but you're Albert's friend, aren't you? Is David?
Yes, David Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how David's role comes into it and kind of what we're going to see from him.
Sure. So basically, when the audition came through, it was for two. I do play two characters. One's Thomas Bone, and one's David Taylor. Thomas Bone is part of the village that Albert's from, and had to do a Devonshire accent. But when it came to David Taylor for my second round, they said, "Come in with whatever accent you feel comfortable in doing." And being a Mancunian lad, I thought, I'd love to bring our home city to this story. So, for me, David Taylor is a boy from this area of Salford. He during World War One, 2 years into it, there was a huge sense of doing the right thing for your country. And you'd hear stories that were propagandized, but they were also true about German soldiers going through Belgium and massacring families. And so that was my reason for David being in the war. It was like, well, I want to protect my family. I want to protect my nation. And I find it quite interesting, me being a black actor as well. Like, what was it like for David growing up in a time that, even though Manchester was a forward-thinking city, like, it was still hard for a lot of black people back then. And that sense of patriotism, saying that he belongs to this country. And he comes to the war thinking, all right, well, it can't be that bad. Like, how bad is it? And then quickly you see how he gets thrown in with it. And him and Albert become friends. Two people from completely two different sides of the country, two completely different demographics, but they, through the means of war, just end up connecting because they've got a lot of similar things and interests, similar humor, and David's a top.
They were so young, weren't they, back then as well? They were like boys. And it is, when you see this, this show, it does make you think, gosh, that whole time was horrendous, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a clip and you can see it off, I can't remember the name. It's a Peter Jackson revival. If you type in World War One Peter Jackson coloured revival, and it's basically real footage from World War One that was colorized. And there's one picture of a boy, and he's walking through the trenches, and he looks up at the camera. And obviously back then they didn't know what cameras were, and he looks at it for a second. But the first thing I noticed is that he's very young. He must be about 16, 17, like, barely left, probably still lived at home, or he's barely even experienced life. But the exhaustion on his face, he's probably walking up and down a 30-mile line, like, to his next destination, not knowing whether he's gonna live or die. And it's just the story's so emotional as well, because they were so young. How many men lost their lives over a war that didn't really need to happen, but it ended up happening, and both on the British and the German side, like, it's horrific. At the same time, are our little lives, aren't they? You and me probably wouldn't have the life that we have if they didn't do that sacrifice. And thankfully, I mean, we won the war. And I'm saying thankfully from a British perspective. I think all wars bad. But yeah, like, we owe as a nation so much to them. And I think, personally for me, I think sometimes World War One does get glossed over a bit, mainly because of the story of Hitler and the rise of the Nazis. And so it's always good to bring the story back.
Absolutely. And another thing that I would say about this is, not only is it an emotional, it is a funny play, but it's also, like you say, it's powerful because it's got all of that real history behind it. And I love the fact that you have kept your accent for that role. And a little bird told me that you actually auditioned in Salford for this role. How did that come about, and what was that like?
Your little birdies are well informed. Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, like, you know, with the rise of self-taping and such, like, it doesn't take much to send off an audition tape. You can literally film it from home. So a lot of actors that I know, myself included, I moved away from London, especially after COVID, because the price of everything was going up. So also at the time as well, you know, you're working and like you would come down to London when it is an audition, but to have it in Salford, yeah, they just said, we're going to Salford Uni, we're preparing for Warhorse. And originally I went in for album. And a part of me was a bit like, there's no way I'm going to be cast as Albert. Like, I mean, we could have, but in my mind, I was a bit like, okay, I'll do it. It's such a big show, and I love the script anyway, so I was always going to audition. And then, but that also freed me as well, because I was like, I remember being in my bedroom, just like practicing with a baby horse, like an invisible baby horse. And then I was like thinking, how tall is a baby horse? Like, how big a horse is like, and then, yeah, I got a stab at the Devonshire accent. I just watched so much Hagrid. I just watched all. You're right, Harry. Like all that stuff.